You know, we've known each other for many years. In fact, our two families go way, way back. And when my brother Rob was first elected to City Hall, Jack was a seatmate and showed Rob the ropes. And Rob got along with Jack very, very well. And Jack and Rob showed that you don't have to agree on everything to work together. But before I start off with a speech, I have a beautiful picture that we found. And this says everything. And I want to present this to you, Mayor. And there's you, and there's Rob, and there's Jack, a bronze statue. But first I'll show it to the cameras. Kind of, look how beautiful that is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You always try to make me cry,
I
don't you?
know, but I get,
Thank you so much.
people don't understand. You kind of get choked up a little bit.
That's my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And that's Mike. Pam McConnell is no longer with us.
That's right.
He's no longer with us, and he's no longer with us. She's no longer with us. So.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful bronze statue, and I remember Rob coming to me and saying there was a request to name the ferry docks after him, and we, without hesitation, Rob said immediately, because again, you don't always have to agree on things to really learn. And Rob, Mayor, told me that when Jack was beside him, he showed him the ropes on how City Hall worked, because Jack was an expert at how City Hall worked. And I said, Rob, then how did you know what to vote? He goes, I just looked over at Jack, and usually I press the opposite button than he did. So he's, but in saying that, in that time, I've also had the pleasure of getting to know the mayor as a thoughtful leader who brings people together, because that's how you get things done, by working together. And Mayor Chow and I were committed to working together. And while we won't always see eye to eye, we won't let our differences get in the way of moving forward on things that we agree on, like building homes and building public transit and critical infrastructure projects. Those are the areas that are critical to the people of Toronto, but also areas that we can work together. We've already shown what we can do to help solve some of the Toronto's most pressing challenges when we work together. Ontario is investing another $42 million, including $26 million for the City of Toronto through the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit to ease growing pressures on homeless shelters by helping thousands of asylum seekers move into long-term housing. In Toronto and across Ontario, too many newcomers searching for a better life are struggling right now. They're living in our shelter systems, church basements, or out on the streets. Even in my area up on Albion Mall, they're living in a store, and that's just unacceptable. We need all levels of government working together to tackle this crisis, and Ontario and Toronto are stepping up. In fact, Ontario has been there to support Toronto in a big, big way. This year alone, the province is providing $3.3 billion with a B to support the city's operations, with billions more in capital funding for major infrastructure projects, including more than $30 billion to build new transit. Investing in the city has never been more important, because we know there's more work ahead. Toronto is facing deep financial challenges that are no longer sustainable. We need wholesale intervention. We need governments to work together to deliver solutions that protect services, avoid new taxes, and put the city on a path towards long-term financial stability. Simply put, Toronto needs a new deal. That's why today, Mayor Chow and I agreed to a New Deal working group. We also agreed the path forward needs to be rooted in supporting smart and effective growth, not painful program cuts or new taxes on people and businesses. This working group will have a mandate to bring forward solutions that respect and support the efficient delivery of local governance and city programs, and support the delivery of shared priorities like building affordable and attainable homes, public transit, and city-enabling infrastructure. Toronto is too important to Ontario and Canada's economic success to let these problems linger. and we need all levels of government working together. That's why we're urging the federal government to meet us at the table by joining this New Deal working group. It's certainly my expectation that any agreement will include additional financial support from the federal government. I want to thank you, Mayor, for your partnership, and I know we're going to do great things together. We're going to get things done for the City of Toronto. Thank you, and may God bless the people of Ontario, and I'll pass it over to you, Mayor.
Thank you. What a touching present that I just received. It was a surprise. Mr. Premier, thank you for a beautiful present. I think my family and my grandchildren will be very grateful, because in it is also my late mother-in-law and your late brother, and Pam McConnell, who often talk about how we are, when we work together, we're really working for the future generation. And I know that your daughter, one of your daughters just got married, and eventually maybe there'll be some grandchildren. We're looking forward to building a city in Ontario that works for everyone. I'm also very grateful that the Premier had a new announcement on the housing benefits. It would benefit almost 2,000 refugees, claimants, and people that are homeless to find permanent housing. And that's also give those people that are most desperate a source of hope. This weekend, I helped celebrate the 60th anniversary of Good Shepherd. They've been housing homeless folks and providing food for them. And I met one woman there that were homeless, were addicted. She came up to me and said how her life changed because she had an agency and a home that she feels very comfortable and secure in, and that she's now helping other people. This city is full of people like that. What we need to do, of course, is to work together to build a city that's more affordable, safer, and more caring, where everyone feel they belong, whether they are from different parts of the world, just arriving here, or that whatever income level they are. Today's discussion ranged on many topics that are really important to people of Toronto and Ontario. The Premier and I agree that Toronto is the economic engine. We generate half of the GDP in Ontario, and that we also agree that the present financial arrangement is just not sustainable, and that we need to have a long-term financial deal, a new deal, a better deal, that whichever kind of deal we have, that would have some kind of revenue that is secure, so that we don't have to every year or almost every month we are just talking about trying to find revenue source. The Premier and I also know that the city is in a financial crisis situation. We have a deficit of $1.5 billion that we have to find solution. So we're very grateful this working group will conclude and have results by the end of November, in time for the city budget, because we have to have the budget out and begin to put together next year's financial preparations. So the third thing that we agreed on is that we are stronger together, that the only way to accomplish something is by working together. And there's a pledge that we'll work closely together in order to accomplish this new deal. I am extremely pleased about that because Toronto on a stronger financial footing will mean that the city is going to be so much more affordable and that the residents will get much better services for decades to come. We know that is urgent, so that we are also inviting the federal government to join us. They do have some financial means, and we are hoping that they would do so. Now that today is the first day the House of Commons convened, we hoped that we can have the federal government engaged with us. I look forward to working with the Premier on this long-term working group. Not that we're going to agree on everything, but we certainly found the common ground, and we will work closely together so that we could create a more affordable, more transit-friendly, and a more caring and safer city where everyone feels they belong. So thank you very much, and we're open for questions.
If reporters could please line up at the microphone behind me, please identify yourselves by name and outlet. It'll be one question and one follow-up. First question.
Good afternoon. Mark McAllister from City News.
Hi, Mark.
Very quickly, you've mentioned a working group with a deadline of end of November. That's a fairly tight deadline to come up with some sort of new deal, and there's been very specific asks that have come from the city in terms of actual dollars versus permission to increase some sort of revenue tool. Which are you expecting by the end of that time, or is it open-ended at this point?
Well, it's really open-ended on the discussions. That's why we thought we'd put the working group together. There'll be senior staff from the city, senior staff from the province working together, and I'm very, very confident we'll come up with a solution. We understand the situation the City of Toronto is in, and we're going to be there to support them every step of the way to have sustainable funding. And as the mayor said, it's not, coming hat in hand every few months or every year. It's a plan that we're going to be able to move forward and support the City of Toronto. I have always said, as you've heard, Ontario's the engine of Canada. Well, Toronto's the engine of Ontario, and we have to make sure we're working together collaboratively and cooperatively.
Perhaps the mayor can answer the question as well. Do you have expectations from this working group?
Yes, we know that the Premier understands our financial situation. Premier Ford had been a councillor, lives in Toronto, understands the needs of having a fast, reliable, and affordable public transit system, understands the importance of maintaining our core infrastructure, also understands the importance on whether it's policing or childcare or taking care of seniors, all of the clean water, you name it. we are in those service areas. So Premier Ford understands that. He understands that cutting core service is not the way to go. It would just hurt the local residents. That's not what we want. And we'll find ways to cooperate to deal with that budget deficit that we have, which is in many ways structural. It's not a one-time only. There are structural changes that we need because right now the City of Toronto is carrying almost over $1.1 billion worth of services on behalf of the provincial and the federal government. So we're delivering the service. We are just not getting the bills paid, which means that that's one of the key reasons why we're in a deficit position. So the Premier understands that, and that's what we're going to work to solve, which is why we also said that we need the federal government on board, because the $1.1 billion worth of service that we are providing that are both provincial and federal responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. It's not just the province.
Is the working group and what you anticipate coming up with, is that all going to be dependent on the federal government stepping up as well?
No, I'll let the Premier speak to. We can't dictate what Prime Minister Trudeau will do. But at bare minimum, we will come up with some kind of understanding and some kind of work and some kind of deal. We do hope that the Prime Minister will join us, or his office will join us, but I don't think it's contingent on having their agreement. But we certainly would like to see his government contribute significantly.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor, for that. It's critical that the federal government steps up. You know, we're putting $3.3 billion towards the City of Toronto, and we need the infrastructure money from the federal government. We need to see some housing money from the federal government, and that's how things work. If all three levels of government work together, work collaboratively together, then we get things done a lot quicker. So I'm encouraging the federal government to come to the table and have a voice at the table. That's the most important.
Hi, good afternoon. Matthew Bingley from Global News. Premier, your tone seems to have shifted a little bit today. A lot of the conversations when you mention Toronto is looking for savings, looking to cut and efficiencies. Why now? Are you acknowledging that there is a structural problem with the way that the city is financed, and what has made you, I guess, change your opinion on finding a solution to that?
Well, I think I've shown over a number of years, I don't care about political stripes. I'll work with anyone, both the mayor and myself. We have a history, our families have a history. I want to work with the mayor, and that's how you get things done. They're in a real tough financial situation. We'll be there to support them, as we always have been. If you look at the budget, I think we're the second largest line item on the budget next to the taxpayers, and we're going to continue working on the key areas of housing and making sure that we have the infrastructure. Right down to the water, that this goes all the way back to when I was a city councillor, the infrastructure backlog, and make sure that the housing is there too. So that's what we're going to focus on, and in transit, but that's what we'll focus on, and we're going to have a very good working relationship to move things forward.
And Premier, if that working group, I'm sure the idea of a Toronto sales tax, I mean, a municipal sales tax came up during your meeting. If this working group comes back and says, this is the best way to have that long-term financial stability for Toronto, will you support a sales tax that's Toronto-led?
I'm just not in favor, and especially in these times that people are struggling to put more of a burden on the backs of the taxpayers. There's always ways to, we look at revenue growth opposed to taxing people. And there's always a way of doing it, but the working group's going to work well together and report back to the mayor and myself and the appropriate ministers, and we'll get through this as we have in the past. We'll show the support needed to help out the City of Toronto, and that goes for all cities right across this province, the large cities. We're there to support them. We've put $1.5 billion out there for an incentive to build more homes. And by the way, I want to congratulate Toronto. They're doing a phenomenal job so far, and I truly believe they're going to continue doing a great job in creating attainable and affordable homes and even regular homes, nonprofit homes. So that's what we're going to focus on with them.
Ben Spur from the Toronto Star. Premier, you say that you're opposed to any new taxes, but one of the things that City Council has asked for is the potential for a slice of the existing HST, which technically I guess wouldn't be a new tax. Would you be open to that idea?
Not right now. What we want to do is work with them. There's a lot of subsidies that we're supporting the city with, so we're going to have common ground. We'll come up with a solution that we can see growth, that we've seen tremendous growth here, economic growth too, bringing more people here, more businesses here, revenues through just regular taxes. If you buy a home, you're going to be contributing to the city coffers. If a new business comes here and wants to expand and add more employees, that's another area that we're going to see revenues come into the city coffers and in return the provincial coffers.
And to the mayor, a couple of weeks ago, council voted to support the idea of a municipal sales tax and to explore things like parking taxes and a whole bunch of other new revenue tools. And yet the mandate of this working group says that one of the goals is to avoid new taxes. So how do you square what council has asked for and voted for with this working group that you've committed the city to today?
Well, whatever kind of revenue, we, the City of Toronto, really doesn't completely care where the money comes from as long as there's structurally a promise. So, for example, if the existing existing sales tax, a portion of it can be shared, or that some of the services which we delivered, whether it is some of the highways or we deliver welfare, for example, on OW. We also deliver childcare services. We deal with policing. There's any number, public transit. Public transit, for example, in the past was jointly funded in terms of the operating costs by the provincial and the city government. Now it's 100% City of Toronto. The shelter cost used to be 80% City of Toronto, 80% provincial, 20% municipal. Is now 50-50. So I can go on and on about how connected we are in terms of these two levels of government, but the percentage has to be right. It has to be sustainable, because what we've seen in the last 20 years is that more and more costs are being loaded on to the city property taxes. And that's why structurally it's not sustainable. And that is at the core of this working group. How are we going to rebalance that kind of service delivery so that we are able, in a long-term sustainable way, deliver the service to the people of Toronto in a way that means that the City of Toronto will not face a big deficit. So that's at the core, which is why it's called a New Deal. It is a different kind of arrangements. So as to where the funding comes from, it's really up to the province of Ontario. And I know Premier Ford has a wonderful surplus that makes me quite jealous. And wherever he can find the funding, I will just welcome it.
Hi, Mike Crawley from CBC. Mayor Chow, it sort of sounds from what the Premier just said that he's closing the door to the idea of Toronto having a share of the sales tax or a new sales tax.
Or the existing sales tax, it could be.
But he also said no to that as well. Just
new ones. He said new ones. You don't want to actually add more taxes, which is in some ways we are coming to life is getting difficult because the housing cost is so high. So people are having a hard time getting by. So we both of us are committed to making sure that life is affordable for ordinary people. Absolutely. That is a top priority. And in order to make it affordable, the Premier seems to be saying that you don't want new taxes, but what about the existing taxes that is already being people are already paying now?
Right, but I actually didn't get to my question, which was...
Oh, sorry.
How do you feel about the fact that he just here at the podium said that he's not at this point open to the idea even of sharing a portion of the existing tax? How do you feel about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't say the existing tax. I just don't believe we should be raising taxes in the situation that the people are feeling the pressure on increase in grocery costs, increase in gas costs, high mortgages. But we're Mike, what we are going to do, we're going to sit down, we're going to work collaboratively together, and we're going to come up with a solution. We fully understand the situation. Toronto's there. We're there to support them in many different areas. That's why, again, we're making sure the $3.3 billion, second largest line item, which hasn't been that way for many years. We're there to support them, but we will work together and look at key areas of infrastructure and housing and transit. That's going to take a real burden off the backs of the City of Toronto, but we'll work together.
Okay.
Thank you.
My second question is Ontario Place. Neither of you has mentioned it. Did it come up in your meeting? Mayor Chow, what did you say? Premier, what did you say? What's happening with your plans for the Ontario Place redevelopment and Mayor Chow's concerns about that?
Well, New Deal doesn't mean, so let me do that again. New Deal doesn't mean new taxes. I think that might summarize that last conversation. Yes, Ontario Place was discussed, and my position has always been clear. There's a City Hall process. I want to make sure that it's honored. It wouldn't be delayed, because I think it's important that when we made a promise that the final planning decision would come forward in December, that would be honored, because it's important that we don't, once we said that is what we said we would do, we will do so. I think there was a bit of concern that the city will deliberately try to delay that process, but the planning process is what it is, and it will continue. I believe the consultation just finished, and a new submission have been given to the city planner, and the city planner will make a recommendation, and it will come to City Council for decision in December. That has been our commitment for quite a long time now.
Go on.
Good afternoon, Natalie Johnson, CTV News. A question for the mayor. Mayor Chow, a local resident and prominent businessman, took out a full-page ad in the Globe and Mail on the weekend saying that, in his view, Toronto is a city in decline. He cites getting assaulted on the streets, his staff fearing taking public transit, traffic being worse than ever, taxes going up. He lays the blame for this squarely on City Hall. How do you respond to this kind of allegation? And do you think Toronto is a city in decline?
Well, let me tell you what I did this weekend. We had the Polish and Ukrainian festivals. We had yesterday the Terry Fox Run. We have the 60th anniversary of the Good Shepherd, helping people that are homeless. People are out on the street. There's a gigantic rubber duck with the waterfront festivals. It didn't look to me, that's only Sunday. I didn't even go to the Saturday. We had the Asian festivals. We have opening, the Portuguese president coming to Toronto, opening, groundbreaking the first Portuguese-speaking long-term care home. My gosh, the kind of building, the kind of activities that's on the street, it's exciting. People are having a great time. They are shopping and eating and enjoying each other's company. It didn't look to me as it didn't feel like a city in decline at all. In fact, if you talk to both the Polish festival organizer and the Ukrainian festival organizer, they said this year had the highest number of people coming out than ever. So that gives me great confidence that our city is vibrant, is diverse, is celebratory, and people are enjoying each other's company. Now, having said that, can it be safer? Absolutely. Yes, we saw some violence on the street. And can it be more affordable? Yes. Can the service be better? Absolutely, which is why we're here. Can it be more caring? Yes, of course. But those are the things we can work on. But I reject that whole notion that the city is in decline. It needs help. We need the provincial and the federal government helping us, but we need the citizens chipping in, which they're doing. They're volunteering. They are working hard. But I reject the premise that we are in serious decline.
Hi there, Alan Hale from Queen's Park today. So during the AMO conference, we heard from the Ontario Big City Mayors and AMO that that municipalities other than Toronto also need new revenue tools, a new deal. So you are doing this with Toronto. When can we expect you to start negotiating new deals with other cities?
Well, first of all, we've probably contributed more to municipalities in this province than any government in the history of this province, working hand in hand with them. We just put out a $1.5 billion deal to build homes, and they have that incentive and the target to meet. That will also create more revenues as we have more homes built. We're building brand new transit right across this province, delivering GO train service, two-way, all-day GO to many locations. We're also building right in people's communities, including Toronto here, $50 billion worth of infrastructure, new hospitals or addition to hospitals that will take care of the healthcare side of things. We've cut the child care down by 50%, saving families from $8,000 to $12,000 per year. And we're building roads, we're building highways, we're pouring money into infrastructure. We're going to continue doing that. We do need the federal government to step up with the infrastructure plan. So we're going to continue working with all municipalities. And I mentioned that to the mayor in our meeting too. Yes, we're going to support Toronto, but we do have that obligation to support all 444 municipalities across the province here.
All right. Could you tell us if there were any property developers such as Mario Cordellucci or Shakir Ramatula at your daughter's wedding this weekend?
No.
Hi, Premier.
Hi.
Jack Cowan from the Trillium. For the health ministers meeting in PEI next month, will Minister Jones be attending? And if so, what are your top
I
priorities?
apologize. Can you just repeat that question?
Sure, sorry.
Yeah.
So can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the health ministers meeting in
Yes.
PEI
Yes.
next month, will Minister Jones be attending? And do you want to chat about top priorities for Ontario there?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. The minister's going to be there with all the other ministers across the country. We're always going to advocate for support through the federal government. You know, I realize that they gave us a little more support, a couple percentages, but there's areas that we can all work together, especially on the staffing side too, enabling nurses and even doctors from one province to the next and be able to have gainful employment. But we have a great working group of premiers in all provinces and the territories, working collaboratively together on healthcare, on infrastructure, and every other area you could think of. And I think it's going to be a very productive meeting in PEI, and we look forward to hearing what they accomplish, but also what the federal government is doing to continue to support our healthcare needs, because it's growing at a rapid pace and a lot faster than the couple points that they gave us in extra funding there.
Okay, and the NDP is planning to table a bill next week to return the Greenbelt land that was removed. Will you allow your caucus to vote freely on that, or is that going to be a whip vote?
No, you know something, we're going to continue moving forward with the facilitators and the facilitator there. Our main goal, folks, is it's all about making sure that we have homes, attainable, affordable homes. And I think you heard me mention about the modular units too. It's not about just one area. It's about making sure that the excess of 500,000 people, and again, they aren't accurate numbers, and the feds aren't denying that. You know, CIBC came out saying it's probably closer to 800,000 people. We need to build homes of all types. We can't have people living in tents. We can't have people living in malls and other areas. We need to continue to build homes, but make sure that they're attainable for a newcomer or a family or a young family that's starting, that they can afford a home, they can afford to pay a mortgage, and that's what we're going to be focused on. And that's why I've emphasized before, and I'm going to emphasize it again to the Bank of Canada. You can't even think of raising these interest rates because you're killing the economy, you're killing middle-class families, everyone across the board. I hear you're thinking about it again in October and the new year. It's just not acceptable, and it'll be falling on your shoulders when people are struggling to buy a home and put money on the table.
This will be the last reporter.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Premier. Cynthia Mulligan, City
Hi,
News.
Cynthia.
Hi, Mayor. Premier, this feels like quite a shift from you. I mean, John Tory was also an old personal friend. He's come here many times. The city has been in trouble financially, budget after budget. Yeah. Why are you suddenly shifting and agreeing to this working group and acknowledging that Toronto's finances are not sustainable? What's the shift?
Well, let's first of all, let's give the mayor a fair shot here. You know, I got a comment on that letter. It kind of disturbed me. She just got elected. Like, let's talk a year down the road, see where we're at. But, you know, and yes, Mayor Tory's a friend. He continues to be a friend. But we've known the mayor and her family for a long time, too. It's not easy being mayor. Very few people. Rob was a 64th, so you're this, I guess, 66 mayor, and it's just not a walk in the park as the city grows and the infrastructure ages and the backlog of infrastructure. And even under Mayor Tory, we supported the city in a massive way. We're going to continue supporting not just Toronto, but other cities across our province. But they need the support, and I'll work with Mayor Chow as I worked with Mayor Tory. It's all about working together, collaboratively together. That's how we get things done. But we need the federal government to step up as well.
And Premier, you've been through a heck of a few weeks with a couple of nasty reports about the Greenbelt, finding a lot of fault with the government. Polling suggests that you've taken a hit. The legislature is resuming next week. How are you managing all of this? Because one thing we do know about you is you don't like it when people don't like you. Well, so, you know, like, how are you doing through all of this? Yeah,
well, I guess I can be for any elected official, but let's talk about the polling. You know, you've been putting these polls out. We know from 3 separate polls, we're at 39, 38%. My favorite saying, folks, is, and that would be a majority government, by the way, if the election was held today, but the only poll that counts is on election day. Polls are for dogs. But if you go out there, and the reason we're at that percent, ask the people, who do you trust with your wallet? Who do you trust on reducing taxes? Who do you trust on creating jobs, as we created 700,000 jobs? Who do you trust about, again, saving you money, saving 10 cents a liter? Just imagine if the gas was 10 cents more, that we reduced it, or the license sticker that we gave back to 8 million Ontarians, or cutting the tolls of the 412 or the 418. Ask the people, who do they trust getting homes built? Getting homes built for their children, their grandchildren. Ask the newcomers, who do they trust to build the homes? That's the reason we are truly at 38, 39% and would form another majority government, but that only counts on election day. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.